Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jade and today I am doing my January wrap-up video. This month I read 8 books, which is a lot, and one of them was over 600 pages. I just really powered through books this month, and when I look back at the books I'm like, I read that this month? I thought that was like a year ago. It's really weird actually. We're gonna start with the first book I read, which I really loved. It was The Rattled Bones by S.M. Parker. This book is so good, you guys. I think it's probably a 4 out of 5 stars. Not a 5 out of 5 because I'm trying not to give those out, and I also kind of had trouble reading this because at first I was like, that's weird. It's about a girl whose father passes away and she has to take over lobster catching for him. They live in Maine and they catch lobsters, which was why I think it's not a 5 out of 5, because it's a cool concept. It was just so weird for me to read about, and maybe I should give it a 5 out of 5 for that. I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5 because it was a new concept, but I loved it. It just was really weird for me to read about. This girl, you know, she's going through a lot of grief, and she's kind of realizing the boyfriend she's been with for years isn't that wonderful, and she sees one day there's this island right by her house, because Maine is full of little islands. She sees this girl pulling a boat onto the island, and her boat stopped working at this time, so she calls out to the girl for help, but she doesn't answer. And ever since that point, she starts feeling this pull to visit the island. So she slowly unravels the secret of the island and this girl, and she starts getting haunted by this girl, and it's really good, and I really, really like this book. I actually want to reread it now that I'm talking about it. There's just so many memories I have with it. I might have to buy this book. I really liked this book, you guys. I really, really recommend this book. It's really good. The next book I have is Flame in the Mist by Renee Ahdieh. This book is about a princess, and, not a princess. No, she's a nobleman's daughter, so she's just a high-ranking individual who is to be married, actually, to the future emperor, one of his sons. And she is attacked on her way there, and they were supposed to kill her. And she ends up living, and you know, most girls probably would have died, but she's always been really different. So she decides that she's going to find out who tried to kill her. So she dresses as a boy and tries to infiltrate the Black Clan, which is who she believes tried to kill her. It's just really wonderful, and a lot of things happen. I'm like, no, why? Gosh, it sucked. It was such a good book, though. It was very emotionally horrible in the end, have to say. Really good, though. Recommend, and I can't wait for the next book, which is coming out this year. The next book I read this month is Daughter of the Burning City by Amanda Foody. This is a really, really good book. You've probably seen it all over BookTube, but I very much enjoyed it. I would definitely give this a 5 out of 5 stars, too. My rating systems, guys. It's a good book. I liked it. It's about this girl who can make illusions, because there's different types of jinx work, which is kind of basically magic, and she can make illusions, and she's the only illusion caster in the last 100 years, and they're her family to her, and little did she know that they can die, which they shouldn't be able to because they're illusions, but someone starts murdering her illusions, and she decides to start going to figure out who murdered her illusions. She works with her father, her adopted father, who is actually the owner of the fair, but she also works with this boy that she meets, and he helps her as well, and it's kind of infuriating for her, and it's very cute. The next book I read this month is Even the Darkest Stars by Heather Fawcett. 5 out of 5. This is a 5 out of 5 stars. I didn't expect this to be fantasy when I started reading it. I don't know why. Just when I heard people explain it, I didn't know it was a fantasy. It's about this girl who lives in a small village, and then the great adventurer guy, the great explorer, there's all these people who explore the world and map it out. He comes to her village to work with her sister because she's going to show him how to climb this unclimbable mountain. No one's ever done it before. So much going on. There's witches in this book who have had their powers sealed. And the reason they're going up this mountain is to find an amulet to seal the witches' powers because they're starting to gain them back. So it's a mission they cannot fail. And it's very, very difficult, and people definitely die along the way. So it is such an amazing book, though, and I love it. And there's a little familiar in it, too. She has a cute little familiar, and I love it. You guys need to read it. The next book I read this book is A Kiss of Deception by Mary E. Pearson. I needed to read this book, so I did, and it was so, so good, you guys. I cannot wait to start with the next one, which is The Heart of Betrayal. I'm going to be reading that. I should get it at my library so I can read it now. I gotta buy it, though. So, this book is about a princess who is supposed to be getting married, but she decides she wants to live the life the way she wants to, and she runs away on her wedding day. And she just lives as a normal person, except two men chase after her. One, an assassin sent to kill her, and the other, the prince she was supposed to marry. So, it's definitely a little bit of a love triangle in it, but it's a really good one. Like, this is the only book I feel like that's ever done a love triangle right. Like, it's so good. And it's so sad, and I want to read the next one because I gotta find out what happens. And I really like this book because it's really floppy. I don't know, I really enjoy that. But this was a really, really good book. The next book I read this month is The Dark Prophecy, Book 2 of the Trials of Apollo series by Rick Riordan. Oh my god. So, this book just brings me back to the Percy Jackson series. It's from Apollo's point of view as he got cast out of Olympus and is now immortal, just like amortal, not immortal, because he angered Zeus. And to become immortal again, he has to help a demigod and just serve them as basically a slave. But Apollo is hilarious as always and a horrible person. Because he's a god and he doesn't understand things the way mortals do. He doesn't understand that when he would send demigods on quests and they died, they didn't want to die. Like, he just realizes a lot of things about himself. And in the first one, you find out that the 3 oracles, like the Oracle of Delphi and all those, that's the known one. But the lesser known ones he has to deal with first. He has to protect them because an old enemy is trying to control them. Which means that there's no communication with demigods. They can't use iris messages. They can't, they couldn't use cell phones or anything in general, but they can't talk to each other. So the Roman and Greek camps cannot communicate, and any demigod on quests or, just not there can't communicate. It is very not safe. And so he goes on a quest to free the oracles so that everything will be right again, so the earth isn't destroyed, basically. So there's only one more because this is a trilogy, which makes me sad because honestly, I love Apollo so much that I could deal with 5 books of him as well. And I feel like there's enough storyline that it could be 5 books. Might just be my opinion, but it was a very, very good book. The next book I read this month is The Grave Keepers by Elizabeth Byron. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 5 stars. I liked this book. I had a hard time getting through it though, because I feel like not a lot actually happened. So this book is from the point of view of 2 sisters, and their parents own a graveyard. But in this world, your grave is very, very important, and people basically visit their graves all the time, and it's where you're supposed to think. And just the whole grave keeping thing is very important to people, and it's I don't really know how to explain it. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's just it's so much more a big, huge part of the just religion in general than it is now. So, the first girl is Athena, and she's 16, and she is a senior, or is she a junior? I thought she was a senior though, so why is she 16? Not really sure. Well, she was homeschooled for half her life, so that might make sense. But she has never had a friend. She's an outcast, and no one wants to talk to her. They think she's weird. They think her family's weird. and they feel bad for her family because you find out that there is like a tragedy in the past, and she's just really insecure. So that part of the storyline is just her trying to figure out what she should do and possibly meeting her first actual friend. And then she has a little sister named Laurel, who is like 11, I think, or 13 or something like that. She's homeschooled. She's never been to school. She's never even really left her home. She's never met anyone at all besides extended family. So she doesn't really know how to socialize with people till she meets this boy who is staying in an open grave, which is really weird because graves aren't supposed to open, as it means the person in it cannot rest fully. Like, they can't rest. So that's not good. But he is a runaway, and she makes a friendship with him. And there's also a big other part of the book, which is a ghost that haunts their house. And ghosts are basically unheard of because people are supposed to rest peacefully in their graves. So you find out why the ghost is there and how dangerous the ghost actually is. It is a good book. I think it was really interesting concept and I very much enjoyed it. But it was also kind of hard for me to get through because it was contemporary, basically. And I'm not the biggest fan of contemporary. I find them kind of slow, especially if there's no romance. So it was good, and I did enjoy it, but it's not my favorite. And then the last book I read this month is The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. I know I pronounced that wrong. Like, I can't. My friend has told me how to say it, but I can't do it. So this book is about King Henry VIII and his second wife, Anne, who he beheaded for being a witch. It's from her sister's point of view, and her sister ends up being his mistress when she's 14. And then she loves him, and she's just like, she's immature and she doesn't understand the world, and she's pushed to do it because she's from a noble family and they decide everything that she does. She never gets to make a single decision for herself. But then her sister starts getting the king's attention and she's no longer in his favor, and she's kind of just not important anymore. And it's about her trying to decide to rule her own life and not listen to the rule of others. And it's very good, and just the way she matures in this book is wonderful. And her family, I love her brother George, he's wonderful, and her sister, I was so waiting for her to get beheaded. I wanted her to die. I was like, please die, I hate you. In this book, I honestly couldn't believe it. I could not put down this book. I finished this book in 3 days. It's over 600 pages. I read 450 pages or something in one day. I couldn't put it down. I read through the entire school day, didn't pay attention. I came home and I read till I went to bed. I couldn't stop reading this book. It was so, so good. And as I'm reading it, I'm like, how can there be more to the story? It feels like it should be ending, and there's just more and more, and it works together so beautifully. And the way the author wrote it, I could not put it down. Everything, it was just, it's honestly one of the best books I've ever read. And it's just because of the way this author writes. She writes so amazing, and I just really, really love this book, and I recommend it to everyone. This is a 10 out of 5-star book. This is so good. I understand that it might not be everyone's favorite book because it is long, and like it feels like it shouldn't be, but it is her entire life story, and there's so much that happens, and you see her find herself and start believing in herself, and you see her sister Anne and like her slowly becoming more and more of a horrible person, and her brother slowly going more and more wild, and it's so good. I love it. Oh, I love it so much. I have the other book by her, which is The Queen's Fool. I might end up reading it this month if I have time. I'm not really sure. It is not as big as the first one. This one's only like 500 pages, you know, you guys. But I love her so much. And I'm actually, I think, going to look into this author and see what other books she's written, because it's really good. And when I started, like, people saw me reading this book. I had 2 people also say they were going to start reading this book, which I think is interesting, because I feel like it's kind of an obscure book. But 2 people were like, oh yeah, I've seen, like, there's a show on Netflix about Henry VIII and Anne, and it talks about this book. And then there was a teacher who also said they just got this book. So I thought that was kind of cool, because I wouldn't expect a lot of people to be, like, reading something like this. But If you guys are gonna read one book from this, this is my favorite book I read. It is so good. Alright, I'm gonna stop talking now because this video is super duper long and I'm sorry. I hope you enjoyed it. I went off on quite a few tangents for that last one, but it is so good, you guys. I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye-bye!